in any way that he or she have chosen to go, or through the influence of people outside. If you refuse to do the work, then other people will assist you to do the work. So training up of children, it's the duty of the parents. It becomes wickedness if you don't train up your child, or you don't direct your child the way your child should go, and you are expecting your child to live in a certain way. For instance, you are a Christian and you are not teaching your child in the ways of the Lord, and you're expecting that child to just know the Lord like that. Or you don't have time to teach this child or to direct this child, and you are expecting that that child should give you peace. It becomes wickedness if you are demanding what you did not give to the child from the child. Children, like I always decide what you want to put on the ground. It's in your hands to determine the type of seed you want to plant. Children are like the farmland. Whatever you plant, it's what you will harvest. If you have a land and you want to harvest mango, you don't put on the ground orange, or maybe you don't even put anything at all. And during the harvest time, you want to harvest mango. You say that it is not possible. It's not possible for you to plant something else and you are expecting to get something else. The children, they are like the farmland. They are like the seed. The seed cannot plant itself. The seed cannot go down to the ground on itself. The seed needs a farmer to put the seed on the ground. The same thing. You have the seed, maybe the way you want your child to go. The seed maybe the way you grew up. The seed maybe the way God wants that child to grow up. You have the seed in your hands. You have the seed within you. But the seed cannot just germinate on its own, just start growing. No. You need to plant. The same thing with the children. You don't blame them for what you did not put in them. You did not put in them. You don't blame them for that. The children also, they are like the gold in the ground. When you want to get the gold, you need to dig out. And when you're digging out, you dig out rubbish. You dig out a lot of unwanted things before you will meet up with the actual thing on the ground. When you are digging out, if you get a lot of rubbish from the earth and you decide to abandon it, there is no way you will meet up with the gold that is deep down the earth or deep down the ground. So as you are digging out, you dig out rubbish. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that in child's training or bringing up the type of child you want, or getting the expectation or the way you want your child to go, you need to work. You need to work. Like the farmer will always go, put down the seed. It will not just leave the seed when you have put the seed on the ground. The farmer will continuously observe the seed, how it is doing. I tell people that it is normal for wheat to grow in your farmland. So it is not a problem. In short, if there is no wheat growing from your farmland, it means that farmland is not healthy. There is something wrong with the farmland. The same way, we expect sometimes children to bring up some negative things. But as a farmer, you need to watch and tirelessly continue to weed out those things that it's not needed for the child to grow. It becomes a big problem if you see the weed coming out in the things or the seed that you have planted. The weed is coming out. And instead of you to weed out the weed, you want to tell yourself it is normal. You allow it to be there. I don't have a problem with children behaving like children. I don't have a problem with children bringing out different characters. It is normal. That is why they are called children. It becomes a problem when you make excuses and give reasons why you must allow the weed to grow up with the seed. It becomes a problem. So when your child is coming up, growing up, you need to observe your child. You need to watch over those children. You don't need to abandon the child to herself or to himself. And you don't also need to kill the child because the child is bringing out some negative characters. All you need to do is to work, is to labor, is to invest in that child. You also need time. You also need time. You need time to invest in these children. Don't forget that children are great gifts from God. They are gifts that God have blessed us with. You see, in some families where they are dealing with barrenness, where they are dealing with childlessness, you see, such a family, even when they are happy, it comes a point in their life when they remember that, oh, I need to have a child, and the child is not there. God has sent the children to us to be a blessing to us. But if that child will be a blessing or a curse, God forbid, depends on the parents. Depends on your investment. Depends on the time that you give to those children. You see, in our time, we see that parents are so busy. The mother is very busy, the father is busy, everyone is busy. At the end of the day, we have no time for these children. We have no time to invest on them. So we need to make out time. We need to make out time for these children. No matter how busy we are, we need to make time to educate these children, to instruct these children, to plant into their lives, to invest into their lives. You don't leave them to themselves. You don't allow them to do what they want to do. You don't allow them to go the way they want to go. The Word of God this day is telling us that we need to train up our children. We need to show them the path that they should go. And when we do this, they will not leave the path that we have taught them. They will not deviate from the way that we have shown them. Even if that child is deviating, you'll find out that along the way, that child will come back because you have trained up that child. You have instructed that child in the way that that child should go. And someone is asking the question, is saying, but how and when am I supposed to do that? I say to people, you start training your child up from when your child is in the womb. You start speaking to that child, instructing that child from when she is still in your womb. And when you give birth to that child, don't wait until the child is 6 years, the child is 4 years. You know, some people will say, oh, let him be, let her be. She's still a child. She's only a child. That's a great mistake that we make as parents. You start the training of that child from the day you see that child on the surface of the earth. From the day you give birth to that child, child's training starts off immediately. You see, there are some kids, when you are breastfeeding them, they intend to bite you. They intend to bite their mom's breast. And when they are biting their mom's breast, they are looking at the mom's face. They are looking at their mom's reaction. If the mom is laughing with the child will continue because the child believes, I am playing. The child believes it's the right thing to do. But you see, when you tell the child, stop doing that, you see the child looking at your face. Some of them who are stubborn will begin to cry. And some of them will just look at you and remove their teeth immediately or their mouth immediately. Child training starts when the child is still a baby. Whatever you want your child to answer, you begin to call the child from the day you give birth to that child. You need to ask yourself, why is it that you start calling your child the name you want to call him or the name you want to call her from childhood? When you continue to call that name, call that child by that name, it gets to the head of that child, to the mind of that child, to the subconscious mind of that child, that this is me that they are calling. And when that child grows up, when you call that name, that child will respond. When that child is 3 months, when that child is a year, when you mention that name, the child knows that you are calling him or you are calling her. What will happen if you don't call your child any name? Maybe you give birth to the child and there is no name for the child. You just look at the child and the child looks at you. You find that when the child grows up, when you begin to call a name, the child will be surprised. Because the child knows that that is not my name. It's not my name. If we have 4 or 5 children, you know what it does have? Sitting and you mention a name, all of them will not answer to that name. It's only the one that bears that name that will respond to that name. The same thing in childbearing, in child training. You need to start the work
is that better than nothing for people? Sure.
At a tender age.
Is that a way to continue?
You need to begin to sow
a healthcare system
the seed
that creates
that you
so
want.
much pain, suffering, and economic hardship? Yes, and until we address that healthcare structure, we've got a serious problem that you allude to.
Rachel, let me just tease out this point that David is making, that in those employers that are employing people at $7.25 an hour, those employers, if they're single head of household or not single head of household, they're getting the earned income tax credit. Hopefully, if they're applying for it, they're hopefully on the Obamacare exchanges. But there are other subsidies that these companies are getting to have that $7.25 an hour employee, which to me doesn't make economic sense. And as David said, they're getting much less value for the dollar that is being put into those healthcare exchanges than those of us that are in other health programs. And so how do you, from an economist perspective, square that? Is that a healthy part of having a low-wage employee at that low level of minimum wage?
Well, I think that the better way to target individuals, especially somebody who's supporting a family, to let them have the income and the health care and the comprehensive things that they need to support that family, is through those things like the earned income tax credit or through the health care subsidies. Because the reality is those are things that a 16-year-old working at McDonald's doesn't need, but you want them to be more targeted to those individuals. A problem, though, that has actually been experienced in places like California is when you have these rising wages going towards $15 per hour, you see that some of these lower income families are losing the subsidies that they need. One family that had a $4 raise losing $2,200 per month in childcare subsidies. The incentive for employers to reduce workers' hours below $30 a week so that they can save $1,000 in the employer mandate from Obamacare. This is a comprehensive policy, and it ends up having a lot of unintended consequences for the very people, the lower income, the working families that we all agree we want to help have rising incomes.
Hey, David, as we talk about gloom and doom in the U.S. economy and what to do about it, I understand you have a new Netflix Hollywood production called Don't Look Up. Tell us about it.
Sure. It's a movie that is spearheaded by the one and only great director, Adam McKay. What I can tell you is it's essentially about a story of a world in which an asteroid is headed towards Earth, and nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to want to do anything about it. Kind of metaphorical for our current world on a lot of these issues.
Do you see the minimum wage debate as an end-of-the-world debate?
I don't think it's like an asteroid headed towards Earth. Certainly, it's an important debate, but I do think what the movie is sort of spotlighting is, in some cases, our hostility to what's happening in our world, the hostility to basic facts, the hostility to science, the hostility towards towards the basic reality that we live in, and I think that's been a major theme of the last few years, and hopefully the movie kind of brings the subtext and makes it the full text for people to think about the kind of information system that we're living in.
Economist Rachel Gressler and author David Sirota, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you to both.
Thank you.
So what's the bottom line? In the 1980s, the poor were told that wealth will trickle down to them. Just be patient and quiet. So here we are 40 years later wondering where's that trickle? The rich are much richer and everyone below is struggling more and more. The American social contract is broken, and it's pretty obvious that unfettered markets leave a lot of people behind. Plus, there's a collapse of empathy across society today. America's winner-takes-all reality means a few win and a lot lose. And it's no wonder that America's political culture is so toxic these days. I'm not sure that the fight over the minimum wage bill will fully address the broader issue of systemic inequality and divisions in America. But it's an important first start, and that's the bottom line.
Jump into the stream.
There is a lot going on in this show.
And join our global community.
When I talk about the misinformation, I think we are more afraid than we are aware.
Be part of the debate.
Don't ever take anybody's one word, because there's always a difference.
When no topic is off the table.
We have been disconnected from our land. We have been disconnected from who we are.
We would love to hear from you, and you too could be part of today's discussion.
The Stream on Al Jazeera.
An act of youthful defiance. We wrote, "Your turn next, Dr. Assad," on the school wall. They arrested me at home at 4 in the morning. The electric shock treatment was the worst.
That triggered a revolution.
The arrest of those children sparked it all off.
Which became a battle without end.
That was the beginning of the armed struggle in Syria.
The boy who started the Syrian war. On Al Jazeera.
Examining the impact of today's headlines.
It didn't matter you're rich, you're poor, what your religion is, you are battling this pandemic. You are staring at it in the face and you're dealing with it.
Setting the agenda for tomorrow's discussions.
Was it a coup unfolding on Capitol Hill?
International filmmakers and world-class journalists bring programs to inform and inspire you.
Each and every one of us have got a responsibility to change our personal space for the better.
On Al Jazeera.
Hello there, I'm Nick Clark in Doha with the top stories here on Al Jazeera. And the US House of Representatives has approved a landmark pandemic relief bill. The $1.9 trillion package will provide stimulus checks for millions of Americans, as well as extended unemployment benefits and tax breaks. Alan Fisher has more now from Washington, D.C.
To cheers and applause, the House delivered Joe Biden's first significant victory as president, a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill, and all done without a single Republican vote in support.
This is a momentous day in the history of our country because we have passed historic, consequential, and transformative legislation.
Thanks goes to the senators who are standing here, our great committee chairs, and all of our senators who pulled together as one unit, beating back killer amendments, making sure the bill was as strong as possible.
The bill has overwhelming support across the country, 61% approval, but Republicans claim it spends far too much and delivers far too little.
We are here today, Mr. Speaker, because Democrats made a choice to put their own partisan political ambitions ahead of the needs of the working class.
The deal delivers $1,400 stimulus checks to every qualifying American, targeted mainly at lower incomes. There's $350 billion for states, cities, and tribal governments, $130 billion for schools, $40 billion for further education, and $50 billion in relief for small businesses. The package was a big pre-election promise from Biden. He wanted to do it with Republican support, but was happy to push on without it.
Everything in the American Rescue Plan addresses a real need, including investments to fund our entire vaccination effort, more vaccines, more vaccinators, and more vaccination sites. Millions more Americans will get tested, including home testing. Schools will soon have the funding and resources to reopen safely, a national imperative.
Biden is expected to sign the bill when it hits his desk on Friday. The administration says the first checks could start going out soon, with many people receiving their money before the end of the month. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has slammed what he calls the government's moronic handling of the pandemic. The country has again registered a record number of deaths in a single day. Lula was speaking for the first time since his corruption convictions were overturned on Monday, but he hasn't confirmed whether he'll be challenging President Jair Bolsonaro in next year's election. Libya's parliament has approved a new interim unity government as part of a UN-backed deal. It will be in place until elections can be held later this year. Libya had been divided between two rival administrations until a recent peace deal. The US Secretary of State says Washington plans to take further action against those responsible for human rights violations in Hong Kong. The warning from Antony Blinken comes ahead of a planned meeting next week with top Chinese officials. He says he'll be laying out his concerns on a range of issues, including the enforcement of a controversial security law in Hong Kong and China's treatment of ethnic minorities. The United States is imposing sanctions on two children of Myanmar's military leader, Min Aung Hlaing. over violence against anti-coup protesters. Washington has frozen all their assets and blacklisted 6 companies they control. The UN says that 67 people have been killed since the coup last month. The Security Council has agreed to a statement condemning the military's use of force. Ivory Coast's Prime Minister Hamed Bakayoko has died at the age of 56. The government says he had been battling cancer. Bakayoko was seen as a possible successor to President Alassane Ouattara. He'd been receiving treatment in France and in Germany. You're up to date with headlines. More news coming right up after Al Jazeera World.
متر اللي كنت كنقطعها باش نخرج من دارنا نمشي للشارع اللي تتكون فيه حركة السير، يمكن غتسمعوا 200 متر بسيطة. حتى الخطوات ديالي ما عرفتش واش كتسارع ولا تترجع للوراء، وما كنقول شكون اللي غيخرج لي من تحت مور هاد الشجرة ولا مور هاد الطوموبيل اللي واقفة هنايا ولا. يعني كانت كتمر عليا كأنها 100 كيلومتر باش كنوصل، ما تنحس بالامان. ما غاديش نقول لك فاش نركب الطاكسي لان من بعد منه حتى داك ميم لو شوفور تاع الطاكسي غادي نخاف منه. عانيت انا شخصيا لان درجه شحال من واحد تيطمع فيك ولا تيقول لك بغيت نتزوج بيك ولا يعني من هادوك اللي اصحاب النقل السري مثلا. انا بقيت نتذكر هاد التفاصيل هادو، ما غاديش نبغي حتى المهنه ديالي، يعني غادي تكون سبب نكره المهنه ديالي وما بغيتش نكرهها صراحه. ما كنتش كنعرف شنو هو التحرش، ما كنتش كنعرف يعني بزاف لان ديما اون فامي ديما كومبانيي. الوغ فاش تكون بوحدك يعني كانت الخطوره كبيره بزاف.
You, Lord, you are worthy, and no one can worship you for me. For all the things you've done for me, no one can worship you for me. Here's my worship, all of my worship. Receive my worship, all of my worship. Oh, you, Lord, you are worthy, and no one can worship you for me. No one can worship you for me. When I think about all the things you've done, for all the things you've done for me, no one, yeah, and no one can worship.
Out, you dig out rubbish. You dig out a lot of unwanted things before you will meet up with the actual thing on the ground. When you are digging out, if you get a lot of rubbish from the earth and you decide to abandon it, there is no way you will meet up with the gold that is deep down the earth or deep down the ground. So as you are digging out, you dig out rubbish. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that in child's training or bringing up the type of child you want, or getting the expectation or the way you want your child to go, you need to work. You need to work. Like the farmer will always go, put down the seed. It will not just leave the seed where you have put the seed on the ground. The farmer will continuously observe the seed, how it is doing. I tell people that it is normal for wheat to grow in your farmland. So it is not a problem. In short, if there is no wheat growing from your farmland, it means that farmland is not healthy. There is something wrong with the farmland. The same way, we expect sometimes children to bring up some negative things. But as a farmer, you need to watch and tirelessly continue to weed out those things that it's not needed for the child to grow. It becomes a big problem if you see the weed coming out in the things or the seed that you have planted. The weed is coming out. And instead of you to weed out the weed,